Hello and welcome to Have You Tried Not Being a Podcast? Here on that hashtag show, I am Yael Teagle. I'm joined by the incredible Toni Sanchez. Hello.
Hi.
I'm also joined by Chris Lamb. Hello.
Where am I right now? Just kidding. Hi.
Hi, I'm so excited to have you joining us today. We are so stoked to bring you the first episode of Have You Tried Not Being a Podcast? How are you all doing?
We did try, but it's not working, apparently.
Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in LGBTQ plus media, because what we've noticed is although there are more stories appearing, they all happen to be either coming out stories or sad, right? They all seem to be real sad.
Yeah. It's so true though, because it's like I can't. I mean, I can't remember the last time that I've seen a story centered on a queer person where it's like happy, but then I really have to dig through a lot of movies and shows where it's just like trauma porn, where they're only interested in like something super sad, something super stressful. Like, do they know? Does their parents know? Do they have to come out now to somebody else that may not know? Or God forbid, if it's just like another like AIDS story. Like I was watching that It's a Sin from HBO Max, which is set like in the early 80s. And it's just about, that first wave of, where people really didn't know what was happening at the time. There wasn't a lot of information and there was just a ton of misinformation going on. And so like, it's very deliberate in what it's trying to do, which is remember a time and a place. But it's also like, man, it'd be really great if I could just see somebody be happy and have a boyfriend at the same time. That'd be nice. Like,
Yeah. If we're gonna be going into it's a sin right off the bat, I will. I have so many thoughts after watching it. Like, first of all, like I'm getting really tired of seeing white main characters. First of all, second of all, the whole scene about like where the main character was like, wait, are you Hindu? Are you Muslim? Really, I did not like that. Not like that at all. Like that I don't find funny, and I don't find, and yes, I know that happens, but it still it feels boring to me, to be honest. Like I've seen that I've seen this before on Looking. I've seen this before on other places where people comment on like how racist white gay people can be, or white queer people can be. Don't need that. Like I'm just I think that the editing and the lighting and the production value is incredible. I like that part, but I've seen this before.
Right.
It's funny that you say that because It's a Sin comes from Russell T Davies, who did make Queer as Folk. Like this is his wheelhouse. This is what he does. Are these stories, and I appreciate this historical drama because we have a generation now of a lot more fluidity in sexuality and gender expression, especially with Gen Z. So to see this history that they may not know about the AIDS epidemic and not know that it was originally called GRID, and the idea that that was kind of glossed over in the show, which is, I think, a heinous glossing overness of it, because that kind of is a big deal that they called it that. So I think, I understand why we're telling this story, but I agree that it should have been told. It could have been told better.
Like it's funny because even though both Pose on FX and this show they both acknowledge that AIDS is a problem in the LGBT community. It's weird because like even though they're both talking about the same type of things in a way, I would actually argue that because of Pose, it really makes, to me, this show, It's a Sin, feel almost more dated in its storytelling, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Completely, because like the the main character is supposed to be the white male character. And it's like, he also happens to be the one who is like the AIDS denier, who's trying to tell everybody that it's a racket. I don't believe in it because I'm not stupid. And it's just like, at a certain point, it becomes incredibly entitled and self-centered intentionally, but then it's also like there's just this undercurrent of like, well, we kind of did this to ourselves kind of like undercurrent that's implied, where it's like, because we didn't take it seriously when the older gays were trying to educate us and these other folks that were trying to warn us to, hey, be safe out there, oh man, you're ruining the vibe and like you got to get out of here. Like it just kind of came off as like, are we now going back in time to chastise ourselves? Maybe Russell T Davies is working through some stuff, and I'm sure he is as an artist. But as a viewer, it just was kind of like, oh man, like it does not at all feel like a sympathetic portrayal, which could be subversive in its own right. Whereas for too often, I think that there's always this weird undercurrent with trauma porn where it's like somebody is so brave for going through something traumatic and they're such a hero for going through something. And yes, sure, people are heroes, but there's a really weird line there though that I feel like it just likes to jump back and forth between saying like, well, we weren't all noble and great and actually doing something to actually we weren't being heroic in the moment, right? But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but is it something that we really need right now? Because it doesn't really do anything for me, especially as someone now where I'm just like, we know now so much more about AIDS. And I know that we're talking from a place of privilege where it's like, now we are the educated folks who have an understanding about, what AIDS is and, all the actual facts about it. But to watch it, it's just kind of like, all right. Some of it was a chore. It really was.
Yeah. Like, going in, I kind of wanted to talk more about what I meant by dated, because my whole thing about like the whole trauma porn that we're talking about with marginalized communities is the fact that like this was I thought we were past this point in like the 90s or 2000s, right? Because we've seen this with Boys Don't Cry, The Joy Luck Club, Brokeback Mountain, all of these I don't know about YouTube, but I noticed this trend where the way that media tries to get people on marginalized people's side is by like putting out a first movie of showing us eating shit, of like, oh, like, oh, look at all the struggles they go through, so now I care about them. I don't want you to care about me just because you've seen one of my people die.
Right.
Absolutely. I think you're totally right. I think luckily, in addition to these eating shit stories, and our coming out stories, this year we had Uncle Frank, which was both a tragedy and a coming out story. Happiest Season, which was a coming out story. In addition to those, there are some pretty good representations coming out these days, right? I know that I Care a Lot, which, depending on how you feel about that movie, the representation was good. There were lesbians and they just existed. And I would say Ginny and Georgia also has some pretty good representation. We have the queer best friend, which is a whole other trope we can deal with, but she's out and it's not a question or an issue or anything. It just is, and everyone knows it. I know you are all fans of Schitt's Creek.
Yes.
Absolutely. 100%. Isn't it great though? Because I mean, didn't we have a fear about David being in a small town? Didn't we have like a momentary fear in that first episode of like, okay, when's the very special episode going to come around? And it never did. It never did. It was never a question. It was nothing that was ever brought up. There's like this weird moment where like the father is kind of having like a drunk moment with a friend saying like, it took me a moment to come to terms with my son's pansexuality. But it's literally a 3-minute like sequence after like, what is it, 5-6 seasons that they had? That never happens. And it's never put on. They didn't have to inflict trauma onto David, the character, in order for the father to kind of have like a reflection just while he's like stoned or drunk at a party one time, confessing something to a friend. And it was just such a really refreshing portrayal of just like, yeah, the people around you might have a moment, but it doesn't have anything to do with you as a queer person. And it doesn't have to become your problem. which was so amazing and so fantastic. So yeah, Schitt's Creek is definitely like one of my favorite pieces of representation in the past few years.
I would also say Saved by the Bell, the reboot.
I haven't seen it.
Fantastic. Josie Tota is in there, being her true self, being the mean girl character, which she's always been really great at that. So to see her in that storyline and have to do a quick tale of being trans, like real quick, like, yep, this happened, moving on. I think that's a great way to do it, and it's a great representation for future generations. Any other not coming out and not sad stories you want to highlight?
I mean, I know that we had that discussion about whether or not the Birdcage kind of qualified as a coming out story or not, because it's an old couple that is not only settled, but they're like prominent and popular members of their community, and they're very well liked. And so they've obviously been living their lives authentically for a while, but because the old conservative Republicans are coming to dinner, now they have to play it straight for the night. So it kind of borders on a coming out story, because there is a moment when literally, like, Nathan Lane is revealed to be a gay man, and it's just like 50% of that movie is great just because it's them living their lives, and then the other 50%, even though it's hilarious because it's Gene Hackman and Diane West trying to figure out what is the deal with these people. They're so weird. I can't figure it out. Like, yeah, it's just a really weird thing where it's like could be, couldn't be, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Also, I would say Kat from the Bold Type, who is a really good representation, except that we keep having her come out like over and over, which is interesting because we do know that coming out is a process and something you have to continuously do. But it makes me wonder if we couldn't have dealt with that in the first season and then just let her live the rest of the seasons.
Tell us how you really feel. Just let her live.
You know what? Let me tell you how I really feel. In this last season, they had to pair her with this conservative woman who like is clearly a Trump supporter. And then they it's like the enemies to lovers trope, which I cannot stand because I hold grudges. So like, no.
You see, it's funny that you mentioned that, because something that is not on this list is the Will and Grace reboot, which I don't want to give airtime. I did not enjoy it. The first episode where they're like Grace, you little weenie, you're decorating for Melania Trump. Like, ugh.
What? Oh, yeah. Okay. So I guess I won't be watching it.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Also, Karen, like, I know that in the original show it was like a joke that Karen is a Republican, but she actually is like a Republican now, which makes it so much worse for me. Like, really bad episode. I won't get into it.
Some shows need to be rebooted and adapt the way that Saved by the Bell rebooted and adapt and had people pointing out the hypocrisy and ridiculousness. And some were rebooted just for the sake of money. And I feel like Will and Grace is there.
Like, they talked so much crap about how they were adapting to the times, but I think this YouTuber that I watched put it really well, where like this is how like a lot of old white people look at how gay people want to look at stuff right now.
Yeah, it's some things are made to appeal to an audience who's not familiar with it. And so it's kind of like the way people say Blackish is made to explain race to white people. And so the Will and Grace reboot seems to have been made to explain sexuality to straight people.
Right.
Awesome for them. So excited for them.
So happy for them. So great.
But, well, to even touch back on It's a Sin, I think the thing that kind of like kept me watching it along was like, I guarantee that because this thing is on HBO Max and because it is newer, I'm so sure that there's going to be a couple of people who are going to watch this and actually learn something for the first time. And there's always going to be a need for like new versions of the coming out story, or the times in our history where it was traumatic and terrible because, people were being actually discriminated against, and it isn't just because of, you know, a wedding cake or whatever, or the identity politics that, you know, other groups always like to say, like, these are things that don't matter. Like, no, these are things that matter, because way back when, that's when your discrimination actually killed people. So I think that it is important to keep making those kinds of stories, but when it's the only kinds of stories that are being made, and then when you look at the folks who are in charge of the studios and production houses that are greenlighting those stories, it does make you wonder, like, what is it that why is it that you guys are only picking a very specific genre of story to tell, as opposed to the whole wide spectrum? And that's certainly something that I think any marginalized group deals with, because it's like, yeah, like Black people, I'm so sure, are tired of seeing slave films and films that are set in the 1960s about the civil rights movement, you know? And I'm so sure that, like, I'm Native American, I'm Indigenous. I'm kind of tired of the whole Fringe and Feathers movies where they only want to talk about how white people are, you know, manifest destiny, and, you know, we're going to go ahead and have our land now. And it's like, oh, oopsie daisies, there's some folks that we now have to displace. And it's like, I'm tired of those stories. I want to see something else. And every group, I feel like, has similar complaints.
Absolutely.
And I think It's a Sin is a really good example, because, like, you're literally bringing in a creator that already had a successful show, when you probably maybe could have asked, I mean, again, details of the, but, like, they could have asked other people, namely QT BIPOC people, to, like, aid in telling the story. I mean, that's what Ryan Murphy did for Pose, and I think it's so much better for that. In response to what you said, Toni, they don't do the whole wide spectrum. They do the whole white spectrum.
Right.
Absolutely. I want to wrap up this conversation on a positive note and bring up a few more better representations, because I think that there is movement in the right direction. I think that The Half of It, which is on Netflix, which is a Cyrano de Bergerac story centered on an Asian girl, and it's fantastic. It's made by an Asian writer-director. So I highly recommend that one. I would also say, if you want nerd content, Wynonna Earp and Umbrella Academy are going to be my votes.
I love Umbrella Academy.
Me too, and I can't wait to see Elliot in the new season and what they do.
He's so fine.
Mm-hmm.
I had more to say on how fine he is, but we're not going to talk about it.
Okay.
We will not spend this time objectifying Elliot, okay?
Well, I guess that can take us straight into our new crush of the week segment here. Who wants to start with their new crush of the week? Toni?
Okay. I cheated. I picked the entire cast of WandaVision. I'm so incredibly happy just with everybody on that show, with the exception of the guy who plays Director Hayward. F that guy. That is an untrusty old white man. Absolutely not. But he's playing that role really well. But everybody else, I absolutely love and adore. Love Paul Bettany. I've always loved Paul Bettany. Paul Bettany popping out of that regeneration chamber in Age of Ultron is the only time I've actually legitimately, like, in the theater. Like, that's the only time that's ever happened to me. But I mean, everybody in that show is so. Kat Dennings, where I get to watch her on a weekly basis. Like, love it. Elizabeth Olsen, if she doesn't walk away with an Emmy after this, there's no justice in the world. But, you know, plenty of people don't have Emmys. I think they should. So yeah, that makes me sad. But anyways, those are my crushes of the week. Oh, and Randall Park deserves his own show. And have you guys seen the Young Rock show? He actually has, like, a really great bit on that show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so more Randall Park and things. That's how I feel about it. So
Chris, your new crush of the week?
My new crush of the week is admittedly not so new, but I want an excuse to talk about him, Jake Choi, of Single Parent fame. And yeah, I mean, I just really enjoy that there's someone who is getting their comeuppance and who identifies as fluid. And I'm biased because I've met them in real life before. And people like him are just exactly my type. I have a very pointed weakness against Asian men who are on the lankier side. And also cats.
Nice.
I see. I see. I'm going to give my new crush of the week this week to I would say a newbie, but she's not new. She's been doing stuff. Brienne Howie from Ginny and Georgia on Netflix. She plays Georgia, and honestly, every time she smiles, I just get so distracted. She has this like big beaming smile, and her character is evil and manipulative. So like she smiles a lot. And it's very distracting. And I'm like, wait, what was said in that scene? Wait, what's happening? So she's my new crush of the week.
I just looked her up. She's adorable.
Mm-hmm. You
Okay.
should look at her smile.
No, because I can't be distracted. So.
Right. All right.
Right.
Focus, Yael. Here on Have You Tried Not Being a Podcast? We like to be playful and fun, but we also want to make sure we cover some important news that is happening. So let's head over into our headlines segment. The big, important, impactful news that's going on right now is that the House has passed the Equality Act, and now it is the Senate's turn. So for those who don't know, the House of Representatives once again passed the Equality Act, a comprehensive LGBTQ plus civil rights bill, which was approved in 2019, but it never came to a vote in the Senate, which had a Republican majority. So now there is a good chance of it passing because the Senate is split 50-50 and VP Kamala Harris has the tie-breaking vote. So for those who don't know, this act amends the existing civil rights laws, such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Fair House Act of 1968, and it bans discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. In addition to housing and employment, it would ban discrimination in other aspects, including education, credit, jury service, federal funding, and public accommodations. It also makes it clear that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 94 does not provide legal cover for anti-LGBTQ discrimination. So like this is really important, and we're keeping an eye out for what's going on because right now the Senate has it. What else has happened in the news, guys?
So Pennsylvania State Rep Malcolm Kenyatta is running for U.S. Senator. The seat is opening up because Senator Pat Toomey, a Republican, has announced he won't seek re-election in 2022. According to The Advocate, Rep Kenyatta is considered a rising star in the Democratic Party, and if reelected, he'd be the first gay man as well as the first Black member of the LGBTQ plus community to hold this position. Super exciting. Going to be donating to him, definitely.
Awesome.
So a story that is near and dear to my heart. Ricky Martin is actually partnering with the One Pulse Foundation to raise funds for the memorial. The iconic singer will be the national spokesperson for the foundation, which was created to honor the legacy of those killed after the 2016 shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. Ricky Martin and the One Pulse Foundation launched an Out Love Hate campaign with a goal of getting 1 million people to donate $49, with proceeds going towards building a permanent National Pulse Memorial and Museum, educational programs, community outreach, and 49 legacy scholarships. For more info, you guys can visit outlovehate.com.
I think that's wonderful. Also, on Batwoman on the CW, they introduced their very first non-binary character. So Evan Blake is the character's name, played by Lincoln Klaus, and was introduced in season 2, episode 5, Gore on Canvas. And in the episode, the new Batwoman asked for their pronouns, which they said he, him, and they, them, before explaining that they just want people to be themselves authentically. It was a really moving little exchange, and it looks like the character of Evan Blake will probably be back this season.
Hey. And to wrap up headlines, WWE superstar Gabby Tuft comes out as trans. So congratulations to former WWE wrestler Gabby Tuft, who announced in early February via social media that she's living as her true self. And I know that we kind of had a conversation about this offline, and I felt like it was something that we could definitely talk about here. So Gabby Tuft, she announced, that she's transgender, she's living her life, and she did that with a post that, if we could just throw it up on screen, it's her posing in front of a portrait when they were still identifying as male. And if I'm remembering correctly, they went by the name Gabe Tuft and the stage persona Tyler Rex. And I know that we kind of talked about how there were already questions arising about how this is how Gabby is choosing to come out, but it's not exactly a hard and fast rule of how people, especially in the media, should definitely expect people to come out. Because I know that there was definitely the whole concept of like a before and an after, like the transformation of folks coming out, and especially if they're transitioning, that can kind of be problematic, especially if people are starting to expect that.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is definitely something that a lot of my own friends have taught me in the past 2 years is that is something that is to be expected, because I mean, we as people just enjoy seeing a transformation happen, right? Like a quote unquote makeover, even though obviously that's a very reductive way of calling someone like Gabby coming out. But it can be very easy for us to subconsciously associate it with that type of thing. Like we've all worked in media. Like we know that people love to see like a side-by-side thumbnail of like,
right,
someone getting a six-pack.
Right.
Yeah.
Before paleo, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like, this isn't just somebody kind of like having like a weight loss moment or like trying on a new haircut. This is somebody's existence where it's like they were valid then, they're valid now, and this is how they're choosing to go ahead and come out. And I know that there was also like right now, like I went to their Wikipedia page, and I know it's like Gabby herself doesn't have like control over her Wikipedia page, but like the Wikipedia page still has a picture of when she was still wrestling as Tyler Rex. So it's like this weird thing of like, especially with somebody who was so public. Like I know she didn't like really, I don't believe, I mean, I've been out of the wrestling game for a minute, but from what I understand, she was sort of like a jobber. She wasn't an A-list wrestler, so she didn't have like an extremely high profile, but it was high profile enough that these images are out there. So I definitely feel like there is a conversation and lessons to be learned from this, where it's like, be aware, be sensitive, and especially know that just because this is how Gabby is doing it, that's not exactly how other folks who are in the same situation would want to do it.
Right. I'm thinking a lot about this duality of both danger and privilege of visibility, right? Hyper visibility from being a public figure, because there is a safety in that, but also it can send a message, because I've seen it with cis gay men on YouTube as well, where it can feel like they're normalizing like the perceived safety of coming out publicly, when when that might not be accessible to everybody, and I know it isn't.
Right.
I think what's important is she's living her life as herself, and she chose to do it this way, and I think that's 100% her choice. I think personally, in terms of before and after pictures, like I totally agree that the media has sensationalized this transformation thing. We literally had shows on TV about it. But before and after photos for anything, for weight loss, for transition, for I can't think of any weight gain, any other pregnancy, whatever. These photos are toxic. The idea of a before and after is toxic. And I think shouldn't be a thing we do at all. I think we should abolish before and after photos, because it seeps into our mind that there is a negative all the time to a before and a positive all the time to an after.
That's really interesting. I never thought about it that way before, but that really hits pretty well. Yeah, like this, it can feed into this sense of like, you need to have this transformation too, because you have to get from like a good situation to a bad situation, when it's very binary, which I know that we don't do here on this podcast.
No.
Not here.
not in this house.
Not in this house, sir.
But what we do here? This is what we do. Instead of another headline about a homophobic fast food chain or a transphobic author, we will spotlight some LGBTQ plus companies, especially ones that are giving back to our community. So today I want to tell everybody about Fluide. Fluide is a mission-driven beauty brand that creates vegan, cruelty-free, and paraben-free products designed for all skin shades and gender expressions. Fluide believes makeup is joyful and fun, as well as powerful and transformative, and nobody should be left out. So Fluide is donated to a number of LGBTQ plus advocacy and nonprofit organizations since the company's inception, and giving back is central to the brand mission. As is their steps to progress the beauty space, bringing underrepresented people to the table and ensure that for every underrepresented person in front of the camera, there are even more behind the scenes. For Fluide, it is important to showcase models who are queer, trans, and Black and Indigenous people of color, but also showcase the talent of photographers, videographers, designers, and assistants from underrepresented communities. Many of us have complicated history with makeup, and Fluide products are designed to be easy, wearable, and fun, especially the Universal line, which includes a multifunction crayon in 4 shades, a shimmery gloss for eyes, lids, and cheekbones in 3 shades, and a glittery liner in 7 shades. In fact, we here at Have You Tried Not Being a Podcast, in partnership with Fluide, are giving away a Universal Beauty bundle. We'll tell you about that in a bit. That's not all. You can get 25% off all orders using the code #show25. That is the word hashtag spelled out, show25.
Yes.
So to enter to win Fluide's Universal Beauty Bundle from Have You Tried Not Being a Podcast? Here's all you have to do to enter. You have to like the post on that hashtag show's Instagram. You have to tag a friend in the comments, and you have to follow 5 Instagram accounts. We'll give those to you at the end of the show, but it's that hashtag show and me and Chris and Toni, and of course, Fluide Beauty. And the deadline to enter is March 19th. The winner will be announced on April 1st. That just wraps it up for today. Thank you to Fluide Beauty for partnering with us. Of course, again, that code for 25% off is hashtag show25. But until next time, Toni, where can everyone keep up with you on the internet, and which account do they need to be following on Instagram?
You guys can find me on all social medias at the Toni Sanchez, Toni with an I, Sanchez with a Z. You guys can also come find me talk about the X-Men on the Astonishing X Show. I also pop up quite a bit on the Fresh Podcast of LA, which is a Will Smith appreciation podcast. But yeah, mostly it's me trying to get back into the groove and find a reason to take a picture in my bedroom where I hide out like Gollum, because it's still a Pan Dulce out there. So yeah, come find me at the Toni Sanchez.
Thanks. And Chris, where can everyone find you, and which account should they be following on Instagram to enter to win?
That would be One Winged Chris. That's all spelled out. 1 ONE. And yeah, you can follow me on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. I talk about a lot of things: nerd culture, Sailor Moon, and also social justice. So yeah, I hope you go around.
Awesome. I'm everywhere at Yael Teagle. That's YAELTYGIEL, especially on my Twitch channel, where I am trying to learn how to play video games. So if you like to laugh at people, it's the channel for you. Again, Yael Teagle, follow that on Instagram for this giveaway. Thank you again to Fluide for their generosity, and we cannot wait to do this again with you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.